And you've obviously touched on it, but as you mentioned, I think a lot of the time there's talk of the system being broken, and I think that also gets lost in translation a little bit. What would you define that as in terms of the system that has not worked for however long you feel it hasn't worked, and how can there be solution to ensure that those opportunities you speak of are created and then actioned?
I think, Craig, that's important. We need to move away, because I see CSA is speaking about having an Indaba again. And I think that's the problem. We're having these gatherings and we're having these strategic documents, but we never put it in action and keep people accountable. And the problem with targets, if you don't put a process in place, you're never going to achieve it. That's the reality of it. So again, and I'm going to highlight this, all we want is an unfair opportunity with the same support. That is what we want. And so why must there always be, as I mentioned earlier, when we refer to coaches, they're not ready? Why can't the same be said for our white counterparts? Why haven't they approached black coaches to coach their high schools? Because they don't trust these coaches. Because there's still a belief that they're not good enough. There's still a belief that rugby belongs to one race group. They understand it. They're better in this. And that needs to change. And we need to do a lot of education. And to take it a step further, I'm quite passionate about this topic, because I think there's a lot of unfairness happening. And I want to use Siya Kolisi as an example. Before Siya went to the World Cup, everyone was targeting him as a quota captain. Everyone was targeting him as he's not good enough to play there. But as soon as we achieve success, all of a sudden Siya's been putting on this pedestal. But just 4 weeks before that, he was branded and he was told that he's not good enough to play. And the World Cup success was great for our nation, but we shouldn't look at it as to unifiers, because the same comments that took place before the World Cup is taking place now. The same mindset is, so nothing changed. And an example, I often use the example is, if a white player plays poorly on a Saturday, he's just another player that had a bad day at the office. But as soon as a black player had a poor day at the office, he's branded as a quota player. And that needs to stop. And that's where the education needs to happen. And Holding referred to is, we need to educate on both sides. But in order to move forward, we need to change that picture first. And you ask what needs to happen? What needs to happen? We need to get people in strategic positions to change the narrative so that we can hear a different voice. Again, if you're putting all these development plans in place, but if you don't speak to the people on their needs, it's going to be of no use.
Yeah. And Wilbur, I wanted to touch on one other subject that you also mentioned a little bit earlier, but I chatted to a coach recently around this subject, and he said, while it's all good and well for a number of coaches with the group that's come out to, to raise these issues and to highlight the problems that they've experienced, but they said it's also important for the white coaches and players to drive the conversation and to drive the change by also joining the group and also speaking out about it. Do you think that's just as important, that, like you say, it's actually not a race thing? It's something that as a rugby community, we should all be united in discussing, and perhaps doing so not with the sort of, I guess, aggressive and defensive approach you mentioned that you see in the comments that come out, but actually be willing to listen, engage, open the dialogue, and for it not to become something that's a bit spiteful or nasty.
Yeah, definitely, Craig. And that's what I said from the start. It's not a racial group. It's not a group for angry coaches that will play former players or administrators that are driving it. The group is really open to everyone. And as I told you earlier, we have support of white coaches and administrators that are currently in the system. We also want to have a plea for women's rugby and women to come on board and to support this, because there's a lot of inequality in that area as well. So yeah, it's open to everyone, and I think it's time to have these hard and honest discussions, because, and then again, is we need to respect where we come from, and a lot of education needs to happen, but the time is now. The time is now for that education to take place. and I think it's good time to reflect. And again, there's going to be a lot of hurt, but that needs to happen. We need to move over that bridge where we can say, yes, we've come a long way, but we've tried to unite. And the World Cup was great for South Africa. In the comments on when Lungi went out, when we had our press release, it shows us that we still got a long way to go so that we can form unity, and and it's a lot of education that needs to take place. But I think that the major thing is that we want is listen to us without defending yourself. Be open-minded when you're listening, and don't victimize, because that's also have happened now the last couple of days. Second thing is give us opportunity, and don't give us an opportunity and then you see it as a development appointment. Give us an opportunity with the same support. We're ready. We have the qualifications, we have the academic qualifications, the rugby that are needed, and that are set us that provide guidelines to appointments. So just provide us with that opportunities, and then put coaches of color, administrators of color, agents of color, players of color in strategic positions so that you can hear a different voice and we can drive the change. If you're going to keep on hearing the same voice, you're not going to drive change.
Sure. Well, but I mean, I think this is just the start of probably an ongoing conversation and a dialogue that we need to keep having. But I just wanted to touch on one final point, is that I've seen some people mention that, the movement's kind of been driven worldwide and now going into sports, and then probably really kickstarted in South African sport with cricket and Lungi and Gidi coming out, as you've spoken of. But perhaps something that needs to be highlighted is rugby probably specifically should be leading the change, and especially I think South African sport should be really leading the conversation because of the past that we have. Do you think rugby has perhaps had a sort of issue of sweeping things under the carpet previously and not addressing these sort of issues, and that the time, as you say, is right now to start engaging and with the time to reflect, to actually start having meaningful conversation? Do you think it has been a problem with rugby in the past, and how can that meaningful change be enforced?
Yeah, definitely correct. I think in the past these issues has been raised, but it's been swept. I don't want to call it unswept on the carpet. We're just having sometimes a long process to resolve it and a long process to put it in place, and we must stop. And as I mentioned earlier, having indabas and strategic documents that we don't put into action. I think the issue is when we need to put it into action. That is where the change needs to happen. We need to put it into action and have these hard conversations and take it on the chin and move forward. That's the mindset. And we spoke about stats earlier. So if you look at stats around top positions, and I'm just referring to head coaches. Out of the top position, I'm including Varsity Cup, Craven Week, and I'm including Varsity Cup, Currie Cup, Super Rugby, Pro 14. 7% of those head coaches are black. And if that is not scary enough, then I don't know what facts we need to provide to show how the importance of it.
Great. Well, Wilbur, thanks so much for joining me and opening the conversation. I think it is probably just the start and something that we can look to expand on going forward. And really appreciated your views, and hopefully we can chat further going forward.
Yeah, no, and thanks, Craig, for the opportunity. I think it's the media also plays a massive role in this, and we acknowledge that we need to work together to drive the change. But I just want to put it out, because this is branded as an angry group. This is not the case. We're looking at facts, and this is what currently happening in South Africa, and that picture needs to change. And I'm going to highlight this again. I'm repeating myself. We want an opportunity. We don't want to be seen as development coaches. We don't want to see as fast-tracking coaches. When do we get to a point where we get appointed with the same resources and the same support? And that's what we're fighting for. The same for players, the same for administrators, the same for agents. And that's what we're driving. And we want people to listen with the intent to understand, not to defend themselves, because we way past that. And we want to move forward.
Great, thanks, Wilbur. I think that sums it up perfectly. And keep well, and we'll definitely chat more soon.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Keep well.
will strike.